This is the Sigma Mark I. It's the first camera that Sigma ever made. My name's Jaron Schneider. This is PetaPixel. Let's talk about it.
I know what you're thinking. You're not cool enough to be like Jaron and go find like this Sigma Mark I, beautiful piece of history in a foreign country using an intermediary to get it over to yourself. Me neither. You know what I would do if I want to get something like this Nikon FG with this 85mm f2 AIS lens? I'd go to kh.com because I feel way safer with that. That way, I'm not dealing with any private sellers. I don't have to worry about haggling on price. And I know that when it arrives, the condition is going to be as stated. Look at the ding on this. Look at that. That's a healthy ding right there. Well, KH would tell me that that's there, so I know what to expect. And let's say that Sigma Mark I shows up from Germany and Jaron's like, this thing's battered and it doesn't work and it's leaking light everywhere. I know it works great. I actually got a really good deal there. I don't even talk about it. But let's say that happened. Well, he's out of luck. There's just no options. But if I get this and I say, you know what, I'm worried about this. I wanted something that was cleaner. KH has got a great return policy, very generous. So I just get that peace of mind. And if you're looking for peace of mind too, then you should check out kh.com. That is why they are PetaPixel's official pre-owned camera gear partner.
Sigma as a company has been around since the early 1960s, but it didn't make its first camera until 1976 when it released the Mark I. I first laid eyes on this camera earlier this year when I was at the Aizu factory in Japan, where Sigma makes all of its products. And they have like this little side room where they pay homage to all of the stuff they've made over the years. Sitting on a table on the left side of the room was this camera, and it immediately caught my eye. I had never seen it before, and I absolutely loved the design, so I had to go take a closer look. As soon as I got closer, I was even more in love. Like, this camera absolutely hits every note for me. I'm a big Nikon FTN fan, so I like the big, chunky, angular look of cameras of that era. So I asked the attendant there if I could hold it, and they of course said yes, and they let me play with it, and I immediately was like, oh my God, this thing is so cool. And so I asked them some rapid fire questions like, when was this made? How many are there? How come I've never heard of this before? The answer was 1976, only about 2,000, and because they're pretty rare. The thing is, if you go online right now and look for this camera, you probably won't find it. I've seen a few people who've taken a look at it in recent years talking about their experiences as recently as 2021, but this camera is not easy to find. I quickly found that out because I just didn't waste any time looking for this camera when I was in Japan. I immediately pulled up eBay and started searching for it. And I found one in the entire world, and it was in Germany, and they didn't ship to the United States. Luckily, my friend Gordon Lang from Camera Labs, who lives in the UK, offered to buy it for me and give it to me when we met up later that year in Prague. When the camera showed up in Gordon's house, he was blown away with how good it looked. Like, it was in really fantastic condition, something we were not expecting considering the age and rarity of this camera. He said it looked as though it had been cleaned and set on a shelf years ago. And when I got it, when he handed it to me and I opened it up and took a closer look, I agree, the interior of this camera was immaculate, except for some flaking on the viewfinder, which is pretty common that I could just wipe away with a Q-tip. It looked great. Looking back on the camera that I saw in Aizu, Japan, I realized it really was kind of beat up. Like, it had seen some stuff. It had been used a lot. The viewfinder was super dirty. All of the gears felt kind of crunchy and sticky. So it just wasn't in great shape. This, however, is in fabulous condition, and it might be one of the best condition Mark I's in the world. And I'm really grateful to have it. So let's talk about what makes this camera special. Right now I have the Sigma Mark I equipped with the original leather case, as you can see here, that's fully together, and it is in really good shape outside of a few kind of dents that are pretty much unavoidable at the corners. The actual case itself is in really good condition. I also have it with what I think is probably what they bundled with it more often than not. It's a kit lens. It's the most common lens I've seen for this camera from Sigma, and it's a 39 to 80 f3.5. And I don't like it very much. I actually haven't used this lens at all. I don't really like how it feels. It's got a really weird focusing system. I've actually been mostly using Pentax Prime Super Takumars. I have a 28mm and an 85mm, and I've been pretty much using the 85mm all the time, and it's been fantastic. So let's talk about some design cues on this before we talk about what it's like to shoot with it. We'll notice that there's one thing on here that's super unusual, and it's this dial here on the face of the camera. And this is the shutter speed dial, which you can see from the top, and you twist it this way to change the shutter speed, and it goes down to bulb and all the way up to 1/1000th of a second. And it is, you know, chunky, feels nice, works well. It's just in an odd position. It also has a second duty of controlling the ASA speed, which tells the light meter what film speed you're using so that you can get a proper reading. All of that's on this one dial, and it's odd because there is room on the top here, you would think, except when this kind of folds in and goes flat to the body like this, there really isn't a ton of room here. So despite the fact that this is a pretty big, hefty camera, there's just not a lot of room for controls anywhere. On the other side of the camera body, we have the film winder, and around the outside of it, you can set it to color, black and white, or empty. It's just a reminder. This doesn't actually do anything mechanical. It's just if you're shooting, you can remember what you're shooting with. Lastly, the shutter button here kind of just like hangs over the front of the camera body here. It's not like perfectly flush. It's as if they didn't have the room for it. It's an odd choice, but the button itself feels really nice, and I just enjoy holding and shooting this camera. So the other thing that I really love about this camera is just how it sounds. So I'll hold it up to my mic so you can hear it. That's the wind, that's the fire. That shutter. I love it. Sigma was nice enough to pass along the original brochure for this camera, so I can show it to you guys and read to you a little bit about how they advertised it, because some of the language in here is just the best. So let me read a couple paragraphs so that you can get an idea of how Sigma marketed this. Now, at last, a camera is available which offers optimum performance with Sigma lenses and simultaneously meets the urgent requirements of the photo enthusiast. Foremost exposure accuracy is attained by coupling two sensitive sensors located within the viewfinder system to a precise all-metal focal plane shutter, which is designed to maintain its accuracy in all types of temperature and humidity extremes. The Mark I not only gives the option of using Sigma lenses, 25 examples of the most advanced optics available today, but its universal 42mm screw-in mount enables one to protect previous investments by accepting lenses and screw-in accessories from a wide selection of cameras. The Mark I does not boast of being the lightest camera currently available. For rugged construction, not compactness was the primary concern of the Sigma engineers. There's a line in here I have to read to you, and it's about the kit lens I mentioned, the 39-80 f3.5. Here's the first line that Sigma uses to describe it. Shorter in length than a 100mm cigarette. We got to go back to measuring things in 100mm cigarettes. If you guys want to take a look at the whole brochure for the Sigma Mark I, I have the scans available on PetaPixel.com. I've linked to them below the like button in the description below. So after I got this camera earlier this year, I've really shot with it quite a bit, and I have many opinions about this camera. For one, absolutely love the shooting experience, but there are a few things that have stood out to me compared to cameras of this era that I think are worth mentioning. Let's talk a little bit about the viewfinder experience of this camera, because it's okay. It's not as sharp as I'd like it to be, and it's especially difficult to focus in low light. I can't necessarily tell when something's in focus if the light isn't really bright like it is today. I've missed several shots because of it, including a portrait I tried to take of Kazuya Yamaki-san that I completely blew because I could not tell if I was in focus or not. The light meter is actually great. It uses a little stick design inside of two brackets, and as it goes up if you're over and down if you're under, and when you're right in between the brackets, you're dead on. And I've found the light meter to be extremely accurate. The placement of this dial is a little odd. It's as you can see, like when I'm holding it, you can tell that my finger wants to rest right on that dial, but not in a way that would let me actually use it. It's so stiff that you can't use one finger for operation. It really requires the pinch of two fingers to do it. So like having it here is a good idea, but like it doesn't really work in practice. It's just funny to me because there's so much room on the top of the camera that they just didn't make use of. And I know that because if you've looked at this camera closely to this point and you're a fan of older film cameras, this design might look somewhat familiar. You see, back in the 1970s, Sigma didn't really have the resources to build an entire camera from scratch, but as current CEO Kazuto Yamaki has said, his dad really liked the idea of making a camera. He basically started working on a camera system as soon as he possibly could, but he needed help. Back then, Sigma had a great relationship with Pentax, and this camera body bears a striking resemblance to the Pentax Spotmatic. If you look at where everything is, even on the top plate and the design of all of the dials, it looks very much like the Pentax Spotmatic, but they just moved a couple things around. One of the ways that the Pentax Spotmatic was able to fit more dials on it was that it made the wind lever here smaller and also kind of set it back a little bit so that there was more room on the top plate. I think Sigma decided to push the lever in, which really cut off a lot of this space. But looking at this top pentaprism here, that is a telltale sign of the Spotmatic. It has basically the same thing. When I met up with Kazuto Yamaki earlier this year and I showed him that I bought this camera, he did mention that it had been made in conjunction with Pentax. So back then I knew at the very least the shutter mechanism was entirely a Pentax design. The thing is, even if this is just a Pentax camera, you can look at it as a special edition Pentax camera, of which only 2,000 were made. There were 4 million standard Spotmatics made, but these are special. There's another thing worth mentioning about this camera, and that the shooting experience is not what I would call stealthy. Chris has said to me that it sounds like a gunshot every time you fire it. So like, if you're anywhere near someone, they're gonna hear it. I don't know, I think that's kind of part of the charm. When Sigma released the Mark I, it didn't just release this camera, it released a whole series of lenses, actually 2 series of lenses, one high-end and one mid-tier, that were designed to go with it or any other M42 screw mount camera. The thing is, those lenses might actually be harder to find than the Mark I itself, as they are very rare, especially the series of high-end primes. I, of course, would love to pair this with a Sigma 135 at some point, but I'm gonna have to wait around and find the right deal since they aren't exactly common. If you've been paying attention to Sigma's digital camera designs over the last few years, you'll note that they are very unusual. Well, this goes back to a time when Sigma was making more conventional cameras, but they hadn't really settled on a style or look to any of them. When the Mark I came out, that was it for this series. There was never a Mark II. The next camera that came after this looks completely different. Sigma never went back to this look and feel for a camera, and that's kind of disappointing because I really, really dig it. It is a look and feel to a camera that Sigma doesn't really do anymore. The last time they sort of tried to compete with a more traditional camera design was back when they were making DSLRs. Prior to that, all of their cameras used to look like this, and then they sort of deviated into the more avant-garde that they're in today, which I still love, don't get me wrong. I just think it's nice to look back in time and remember what Sigma used to be doing, and, well, really appreciate it. This is an absolutely lovable little tank and is one of my favorite cameras that I own, and is absolutely worth your time if you get a chance to try one out for yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane with me and taking a look at a camera that I would say is probably my favorite SLR design that I have right now. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you in the next video. Later.